I get to cook you something that I eat maybe 2 or 3 days a week. Seriously. A beautiful piece of salmon. I cook it unilaterally, which is only on the skin side. We want to get that skin really crispy. Then I flip it over and kiss it on the other side. I like my salmon medium rare to medium, or as they would say in France, au point. I'll always eat my salmon with sautéed spinach. Of course, Popeye's favorite vegetable. Packed full of nutrients, both of these ingredients. What you may see at the grocery store is a fillet of salmon. This is probably the most common way that you'll see salmon presented. You can see the beautiful fat that is in the belly on the bottom, and certainly that's one of my favorite pieces as well. But it's a little more difficult to cook, and certainly the skin in that is a little different than the skin on the top. So it's a little thicker for that protection. The top piece of skin is a little thinner. So you can see if we touch the flesh, it responds by bouncing back quickly, and that's a true sign of freshness in any fish. I'm gonna go ahead and trim this up a little bit just to make it a little. This is where the dorsal fin was. But you can see here, you can see all that beautiful fat that's just layered in there. All that full of omega-3. We have a little bit of the vertebrae here. I'm just going to trim that out. And of course, we have our pin bones that run down. So we want to make sure that we're removing those pin bones. And more likely than not, the fish that you buy in the grocery store will have those pin bones already removed. This is a sustainably raised Ora King salmon from New Zealand. And they raise them as close as they can to how they grow in the wild. Okay. Eliminated all of our pin bones. Always keeping a clean, dry surface. I'm going to remove the sirloin, as we spoke about now. You can see where the vertebrae was. We're just going to take our knife and just go right down that line. In order for us to really get that skin crispy, we want to remove as much moisture as we can from the skin. So we like to do something we call squeegeeing the skin. You notice I put it on a moist kitchen towel here to keep it from moving around. So if I take my knife down, you can see the water. You can see the water start to come off of that skin. We want to get all of that water off of there. And so just back up. And this will also assure that there's no more scales on the fish. And then back down. All the moisture that's accumulating along my knife blade, you can see that. Removing more of the moisture out of the skin, which allows the skin to get much crispier when we cook it. So in our kitchen, when we say squeegee that, that's what we're doing. Again, back down. Sometimes my knife, now I'll start to do my knife at a little sharper angle to dig in there, a little more pressure. And you can see still moisture coming off of the fish. This will also, when we turn it back onto the board to portion it, the dry skin will adhere itself to the board. So again, stabilizing the fish or this fish so that I don't have to put a towel underneath it to prevent it from sliding around. How much water can you get out of it? As much as you can. You can see also the skin is starting to dull out a little bit because moisture is pulling out. Okay, I'm pretty happy. Now we're going to go ahead and cut our portions. You see this little bloodline that runs down there? I don't mind that. In fact, I enjoy it. But for those of you who don't like it, you can also just trim that out if you want by taking your knife and just running it down at that angle and removing it. Always keeping my board as clean as possible. Sacrifice a little bit of that. Now, one thing that you want to see when I'm cutting this, taking my portion, I'm putting my hands here to brace it so that it doesn't move away from me and then result in a slice or a cut that's not precise. Okay. Any fillet that has this diameter or this dimension can be cut this way. Striped bass, for example, beautiful large striped bass. This is about a 10-pound fish. So anything that's between 8 and 12 pounds would yield you that beautiful supreme or that beautiful sirloin at the top of that fish. And you can do the same type of preparation. Even bass, striped bass, is something that we do crispy skin. Of course, if you don't like the skin, then we would just remove the skin very easily. And we would do this when it was the whole fillet, but just to show you, for those of you who don't like the skin, there we go. I'm going to go ahead now and start to saute these beautiful salmon fillets. We're starting with a high heat. In your calculations of how much oil to use, we have a lot of fat in our salmon. We've already identified that. You see that here on the belly. You've seen it on the sirloin. So we don't have to add as much oil because that fat from the fish is actually going to render out a little bit. Nice even coating on the bottom. Thin coating. Remember, we're starting with a high heat. We're going to bring that temperature up relatively hot. Although this, I'm not going to let come to a smoke point. I don't want the skin to cook too fast. But it needs to be at a temperature that's not going to result in the skin sticking to the pan. Which brings up a really good point that I want to make is tempering our food. We always talk about tempering our food or bringing our food to room temperature. That is the same with fish, leaving it out to get to room temperature so that when you do put it in, you're starting to cook it, two things will happen. It'll be more evenly cooked. And in this case, the skin is not so cold, so we're not threatened with our skin sticking to the bottom of the pan. I'm not going to season this salmon. I'm going to use some finishing salt to season it after it's cooked. We also don't want to overcrowd the pan. If we have too much of protein in there, too much vegetable in there, then the recovery time is going to take a little longer. Recovery is when you put your ingredients in your saute pan or in any cookware, the time it takes to recover from the temperature loss with the ingredients that you've added to it. Patience, patience, patience. Don't try to rush it. Sometimes we as cooks always want to move things around. Sometimes it's just better just to let the heat and the protein do their jobs and the cookware before you do anything. And turn it down. Sound is very important in this process in cooking. Sound is equally as important as aroma, as temperature. You can hear what's going on with your food if you pay attention. You know how much moisture is evaporating from the skin or how much moisture was in your food because of the sizzle. That's a very important thing to remember. Sizzle starts to go down, then there's less moisture. So I just want to check to make sure that they haven't in any way adhered themselves to the bottom, so I feel good about that. I just want to look at the bottom, so we're looking really nice there. You notice I'm not afraid of the heat. I have a lot of experience working this close to the food, but I want you to also feel comfortable working close to food. We squeegeed the skin, which was really, really important to remove all that moisture that allows us to get our skin crispier. This will also allow us to have more control over the temperature that we're going to finally result in our salmon. So some people want to have their salmon rare, but they want a crispy skin. How do you do that? Less moisture in the skin results in a crispier skin. So these are the things that are very important in doing. You're able to control not only the crispiness of the skin, but also the temperature, the final temperature that you're cooking your salmon to. I'm going to go ahead and baste this a little bit as well. Look at that, just really, really coming out quite nice there. My heat is probably a medium fire now. So you see that I've created a lot of violence with that basting. This is a high smoke point vegetable oil. Could be anything from canola oil to coconut oil to grapeseed oil. Okay, so we're almost there. I also like this dish because it's a one pot meal for me. In other words, once I cook my salmon, I'm going to saute my spinach in the same saute pan, so resulting in only having to clean one pan. And you hear that. As soon as that hot oil hits the liquid that's in the flesh, it starts to sizzle more because it's pulling out moisture. I'm only using a spoon as my utensil, but whatever you're comfortable with, I don't want to suggest that you only use a spoon. If you're not comfortable using a spoon, you need to use a spatula. By all means, use a spatula. So I'm just going to turn it over quickly there. Kissing it on the other side. Skin is nice and crispy. Hit it just a couple times. Beautiful. I'm going to go ahead and turn my fire off. Safety precaution there. We're going to drain our fish. We also want our fish to rest. We talk about meat resting all the time. Very seldom we talk about fish resting, but any protein that we're cooking, the bigger that it is, the longer we want it to let it rest. So I can feel that skin. I don't know if you can hear that, but nice and crispy. I'm going to drain my oil off of here. I want to be careful whenever draining oil to let it accumulate in the bottom before pouring it out. One great thing about this piece of cookware is that it has a flared edge, which allows us to pour very evenly. If it's a straight edge, it's going to be a little more difficult to pour it out evenly. And you'll see that more and more in sauce pots than maybe in a saute pan, that opportunity to be able to pour evenly. We're going to turn our fire back on, high heat. I don't mind these little remnants of fish in there because we're going to cook our spinach in this. The spinach has an enormous amount of water in it, so it's going to go pretty quickly. We're going to flavor that with some minced shallots. You could use minced red onions or just onions if you like. I'm going to grate a little bit of lemon zest in there because I like that a lot. And just grating right down to the pith. This is pre-washed spinach. When I grew up, we didn't have pre-washed spinach, so we had to do a lot of washing of our own spinach. Okay, so that little rasp grater there really does well with the lemon zest that I'm putting in here. I'll put a layer in. Salt goes down. Some of our shallot. Spinach. It's hard really to evenly season spinach as it cooks because it all starts to clump together. Now, you don't have to use any shallots if you don't like. Again, using things that you like and you enjoy the flavors of is the most important part of cooking. Finding ways for you to incorporate your favorite things. So you can hear that. You can hear that sizzle. The spinach cooks. All that water coming out of the spinach is what's causing it to sizzle like that. I turn my fire down to medium. Turn my drain pan over. Now sometimes you just like wilted spinach. That may be a nice level of cooking for you. Okay. There we go. Go ahead and drain that. Turn off my fire. I lost some spinach in there a little bit. Sorry, guys. Then we've prepared a little chow chow here, which are a pickled vegetable from our garden, which we love. I've drained this spinach. Is it necessary to drain spinach? No. If you don't mind a little pool of liquid around your fish, then it's all about presentation. I'm just going to finish it with a little bit of finishing salt. So this is Malden salt, a flake salt. I like the texture, the way it crunches when I bite into it. And then just a little squeeze of lemon around there, just to give it more of that fresh, vibrant flavors. And there we have my favorite dish, crispy skinned salmon with sauteed spinach.